Hello, dear friends. In this episode, we'll begin with the prophecies of Hieromonach Anatoly Kievsky, and after that, there will be current situation update and answers to viewer questions. Very little is known about the life of the monk, and to some people it seems that it is sufficient ground to doubt the legitimacy of the prophecies which are printed in a couple of books couple of decades ago. However, since they are not very recent, at least they are a couple of decades old, I picked them up because they capture the sentiment of the current times so precisely that it is kind of difficult to imagine that it is possible to randomly guess that just by reading the Bible and making fanciful interpretation of the Bible text. And the 2 points which impressed me most is, first of all, he speaks about the Great Reset. This is the exact term he uses, and he says that people will talk a lot about some sort of Great Reset in those times, and everybody will expect it in some form or another. Everybody will believe in that. And then he continues, and because everybody will talk about this reset, the people will assume that it is some sort of sudden event, and they will wait and wait. They will talk about it all the time, and it will never come. Instead of that, the Satanists will do everything very gradually. And while the people are distracted by the discussions about this great reset, they will not notice how gradually they slip into absolute total misery and confinement. And as far as Mark of the Beast, he said that it will be in the same way. People will be busy in intellectual discussions of what will exactly the implants make, how will they make it, what are they all about, what is the composition, how do they interact, and all of that. And while they're distracted with all these discussions, they will not notice themselves how they will be all marked. And the second point, which I found very interesting and relevant to what is actually happening, is about the way in which the new genuine spirituality will appear. As we have covered in previous episodes, that will happen first in the Slavic lands, when the young people who would previously would gather in groups and go drinking and sinning will start actually going to holy places in groups, and they will become as devoted to real spiritual practices as now they are to senseless entertainment as they're being programmed for by the TV set. Now that's there in actually many prophecies, not all of them from Eastern European seers, but what Anatoly Kievsky adds is that while that is going on, the rest of the world, they won't even have the slightest clue that is actually going on already at places on Earth, and they will live in their own reality as dictated by the Antichrist media, and they will think that is the only way. And it will be just a handful of people from the West who will be aware of this, and that will be those who visit the East personally for some reason or another, and they will discover to their greatest surprise that the sprout of the new beautiful Earth is already showing above ground. So I've been wondering if this information blackout about Russia, they have cut out access to Russian media for the Westerners. Isn't that the beginning of this process? Well, the parasites, they're very interested in prophecies because that's where they get their inspiration from. Now it's the only cosmic time that they will be let loose on Earth, and they know there is no way they can trample this young sprout, so at least they're trying to confine it so that they can mark as many souls as possible in And now I will quickly go through a few other points from the prophecies of Anatoly Kievsky, which are not necessarily much new. The events which he outlines, those were covered already in the previous episodes, but there are some fine nuances which he adds here and there, and which, when we compare with what we see in the news, are very, very relevant and always true. And as usual, keep in mind that the events will not happen exactly in the sequence which are mentioned in the prophecies. These are collected quotes from talks with the monk. As far as the teachings of the Antichrist, he describes them as looking and sounding very evangelical, very biblical. He will have a team of psychiatrists who would have for many years studied the habits of the people of different religions and parts of the world, and he would have a compilation of philosophies for every land to fit and flatter the pride and the needs of the corrupted parts of the people in those lands, so that they will accept the teachings offered. People will overlook the discrepancies in the teachings because of the psychological traps which the psychiatrists have laid down when they compiled these false philosophies which the Antichrist has prepared for each and every land. And at the end, Anatoly Kievsky said, this new ecumenical religion, which is now this is actually happening, it will unite mostly Christians, Muslims, and Jews. That's how it will start, Anatoly Kievsky said. But then he said that later through tribulation, Christianity will decide to opt out from this union. But it will continue even without them, because the Antichrist would have taken over all social structures, and there will be no way to live in the society and not be totally controlled by him. And Anatoly Kievsky continued that many people ask themselves, there are so many events, so much drama is going on during the tribulation, and it is all happening just in 3.5 years or 7 years, if we include the pre-tribulation. How is that possible? Moreover, we read that time will be shortened, so that makes it even more difficult to fit that many wars and rebuilding and movement of nations and people. And he said that actually it will be possible because everything will be almost completed during the couple of decades of intense preparation before it all starts. The parasites, they will be preparing the stage intensely for a couple of decades, and all these things which will be completed during the tribulation, they will be almost ready before it even starts. Again, something which we see happening, and something which was kind of difficult to guess a couple of decades ago when the first book was printed with his prophecies. He also explained that the same situation will apply to the mark of the beast. It will be distributed in stages, he said. The first stage is proliferation of all kinds of barcodes and scannable electronic marks. The second stage is when they will assign a card with ID special for everybody, and the third stage is when all people will have it wearable on their body. That will be at the end, when they can no longer refuse it. So that's why he explained that while people are busy philosophizing what is going on, they will be marked already, and it will be too late by the time they figure how bad it is, and everything is misery around, which is kind of starting already in many lands. Certain foods disappear, others are quite expensive. Of course, when the fuel is getting more expensive, that means many more things soon, or actually everything soon will be more expensive. A significant part of the populations of even some now considered amongst the richest countries in the world, significant part of their population will have no heating in the winter because of all this nonsense. Just one of the many examples, not to mention when certain food products start missing. But again, it will be done all very gradual so that the people will surely fall in the trap. And as far as the complete takeover of the Antichrist, he says that will come after the Third World War, in which all countries of the world will be involved. Maybe up to 1/3 of the world's population could be killed in that war. 20 years ago, Anatoly Kievsky said, well, you have some maybe 30 or 40 years before that war. Although, as all prophets, he says that timings should not be considered precise. But as far as the Gradущий Tsar, or what is maybe called the great monarch in the Catholic prophecies, maybe, the future pious king of the Slavic people, he said he will surely come. Usually he said the ordained time for his reign would be 15 years, but he said it could be also 1 month. We don't know. Now, when the Antichrist comes openly amongst the people, he will be famous as the great peacemaker. Although he would have, of course, in the background organized all the wars happening now and the upcoming wars. In the background he did all, but when he comes, he will do peace talks, and nobody will be allowed to say anything against him. Such a person will be immediately shunned. People will tell him to shut up, and he will be prosecuted as terrorist because it will not be allowed to say anything against the ultimate peacemaker who saved humanity from wars. And Anatoly Kievsky narrated that only a couple of strong countries will still stand on their feet after the Third World War. A couple of kings, 10 of them, will manage to organize a meeting still after the devastation and will decide once forever, yes, we surrender, there will be only one kingdom, so that we don't have any more war, and surprise, surprise, the head of that future kingdom will be the Antichrist. And then the entire system with IDs and numbering and renumbering will come to fruition, so to say, at that moment. It will exactly serve the purpose of the Antichrist, because in his kingdom everything will be orderly and numbered, and nobody will be able to buy and sell without this special ID, for the protection of the people, of course, and bank security. That's what the gullible people will believe in, and exactly as they throw roasted chickpea at monkeys to distract them, they will throw innovations and prosperity and all kinds of promotions and new products and new foods at the market to distract the attention of the people. And there will be some time when this kingdom will flourish, the kingdom of the Antichrist. It will be a very short period, because he will still need the support of the people, because there will be one land left which still has crosses, where people are still Orthodox. That will be the kingdom of the Slavic people, and that will be kind of a thorn in his eyes, and he will instigate this hatred of all countries and nations with all kinds of sophisticated lies and propaganda that you see. That the kingdom with the crosses and the Orthodox people, they are the only threat, the only thing you can fear from. That's why we have to be against them. He will even meet with the Gradущий Tsar, the Slavic king at that time. They will have negotiations. But in the Slavic kingdom it will be not already heaven on earth. Just the people who are in heaven, there will be a very small handful. Most of the other people, despite having such a king, will have their minds poisoned. and will eventually also take the mark. Basically, Anatoly Kievsky said, from what I see, practically almost everybody will take the mark, just very, very small exceptions will not. So Anatoly Kievsky spoke about Kiev as well. It will be a sad sight to behold during the tribulation. All the cars will be useless, there will be no fuel, and on the top there will be no water and electricity in the buildings. So people will be offered to just leave. They will even open the borders. It seems the border to Russia for those who wish to leave. They will be most welcome to do that, because over there will be a rain of blood. The Chinese will be managing that region by that time. So the people of Kiev will either have the choice to stay without food, water and electricity in the smelly, dark, cold buildings, or leave to the Chinese butchery field. In addition, after the appearance of the Antichrist, there will be something an enormous earthquake, probably with lots of sounds, like some sort of explosive buzzing sounds, as if coming from inside the earth, or at least that is the translation of "подземный гуль," which I could find. I found the real description of a similar smaller event in the past. It also immediately switched off the electric grid in the region, although the earthquake itself was very minor. It just destroyed one kindergarten, which happened to be in its epicenter. It wasn't a major earthquake, but the people were quite horrified, and they, for some reason, were afraid to go back to their houses. All of them came in the squares and were very, very afraid after that. So something similar but much stronger will happen when the Antichrist appears, and that will have a great psychological impact, and people will become even more gullible. They will lose their minds and fall in his trap even easier. And as far as those few rare scattered souls here and there who will live through the tribulation, how will they survive is actually only through prayer, because the fishing net of the Antichrist will be so perfect that he will leave no scope, no possibility for anybody to escape anywhere from his economic system with the cards and the marks. So it will be always by special arrangements for those who pray for them, and the souls who will make it through, who will take the test. Anatoly Kievsky explained that those who are meant to live through these extremely intense times, this will be souls who would have, who are really repentant sinners with great sins in the past. So that is the path they will choose to get purified from their sins, and after that they will be as noble and as pure as he says, Peter and Paul and the apostles of Christ. He says that, as it is said in the Holy Scriptures, the skies will be silent, the angels will remain silent, kind of. During the tribulation, they will just look what madness can people will create, how far they can reach in their madness. And during that time of heavenly silence, Anatoly Kievsky says that practically the world will be maintained functioning, and some people will survive because of the prayers of some very special pure saints or monks, people who live in total seclusion and isolation from the civilization. Upon the power of their prayers will rest whatever life is left on earth at that time. Because if it was all left upon the consciousness level of the people directly involved in the game, it would all blow up into pieces due to madness and insanity. And that are the prophecies. What we read in the news, every 30th child is now diagnosed with autism when the children get born. They're so much damaged by the toxic environment in which they got born, mostly in psychic sense, but also in terms of the pollution of the food, air, and the entire environment. And the rate at which they are implanting insanity in the young generation is just, really unbelievable. Now in parts of Australia, I can barely believe it. There is a law that if you try to talk somebody out of changing their gender, even if it is a child, you can face, tens of thousands of fine, if not hundreds of thousands, and up to 20 years prison. That includes the situations as, for example, somebody who is wondering if they should change their gender and they go to a priest, let's say, and ask him to pray for them to know what is the right thing. Now, if the priest prays from their name, although somebody asked them, if the priest prays that they change their gender, that is not an offense. But if his prayer includes the possibility that they don't change their gender, in legal terms, that is discouraging the people to change to their real gender, and the priest could face 20 years of imprisonment for doing so. Another scenario mentioned in the legislation is, for example, somebody goes to a psychiatrist with a question regarding gender change. So if the psychiatrist says, while counseling, anything which could imply them not changing their gender, even if it is a normal part of the conversation, and even if the question of which the patient posed expects such an answer and reasoning of this type, still the answer is surely classified as an attempt to talk them out of changing their gender and is punishable. And they're putting all kinds of hormones, always targeting this kundalini, the sexual energy of the people, especially the young people, because once they get hold of the divine creative energy, that's why this creative energy is connected with the procreation function of the organism. Once they have hold of that, they have a hold of the entire psyche of the organism, and they basically have that soul in their grip. And that's why preaching and encouraging all kinds of sex perversion and idiotism, autism, is one of their main goals. And as far as the current situation, lately it is becoming more obvious how serious are they about this kind of eco-fascism is probably the right term for it. Under the pretext of climate change, they're introducing all kinds of policies which are clearly aiming at creating starvation and desperation and frustration, which are actually more important than the starvation. And people are locked at home, and since the lockdown started, people are watching 2 times TV more than before, double. While the so-called positive thinkers, who are assuring you under the excuse that you should think positive, that everything will be fine, just don't prepare for yourself and never do long-term thinking, they're writing with bold letters that mainstream media has committed a suicide. What suicide? It's a double revival for them. Yes, maybe the people believe them less, but that is something different. That is something which they're prepared for. For them, the goal is to harvest the people's attention, because that is the energy which fuels their plans. And now they have double of people's attention, so actually they are harvesting great success now. And those who don't tell you to leave for the countryside and prepare for life in seclusion, they are indirectly actually helping the Antichrist to get your soul, and they are distracting your attention. The false reasoning, for example, they say, you see, we are winning, the people are winning against the parasites because a certain government was forced by us to write a letter of apology for all the COVID nonsense. I mean, what is the letter of apology good for when the nanoparticles are assembling living parasites within their bodies? According to some estimates, maybe as many as half of the people who died in the Second World War, that many people have died from the fixation already. And again, the people who are not yet dead but are suffering terribly because of the fixation, how many are they? And probably in long term, more people will die from the fixation alone than those who died in the Second World War. Just their death will be way more painful, because they will die slowly from parasiting living creatures, which it seems reassemble themselves once they are injected into the victim's body. Also, when they were calculating how many people died from the fixation, probably they didn't even include all the miscarriages which were caused by this. And those are really a lot. Now the birth rates, at least in Europe and probably worldwide, have dropped dramatically after the fixation campaign started. And by the way, this campaign is still going on with full speed. Many people are just entering. Even now they are getting fixed for the first time. Despite seeing what is happening to those around, people are losing their minds. Old people start forgetting a lot after fixation. This is really going on, at least in my area, really a lot. And as far as the green eco-flavored scams, they have been around, we know, for quite some time now. But lately they have intensified. It's happening much and much faster. They are openly talking about deadlines for banning petrol vehicles. They're closing production lines of basic foods, which is of course all preposterous, because it is them who have been making sure that all the real eco-innovations, like cars running on water and lots of other really clean stuff, is buried and disappears from the view of the ordinary people before it starts getting manufactured. We know very well that this is nothing but a pretext for introducing even more oppressive form of financial slavery worldwide. And the fact that they're getting more and more aggressive lately should awaken everybody to the fact that it is time to prepare to be absolutely independent of any of their systems, not only the financial. And as usual, everything they do is very well planned now that they have put the people in an eco-alarm mode. They're even openly telling them that they have been putting bug, so-called nutrition, bug parts as so-called nutrition in the food, secretly in the food of the major brands. And now they're becoming open about it, and Some people even swallow it up, thinking that they will get nutrition and not understanding how important is the consciousness of what you swallow. That's why they want us to swallow insects. Those are the manifest forms in our reality of the parasitic creatures. They want us to eat insects so that our mindset becomes like that of the insects. And although the eco-fascism and the fixation aftermath are kind of in the foreground currently, in the background they are priming the people intensively for the alien landing scams, which are very, very likely to take place as well soon, within this decade. And also I got messages, people are asking me what to do when they get COVID. Well, I did not get it myself, so I don't speak from first-hand experience, but probably the first thing I would recommend, the easiest, would be MMS, and then Iboga, which the microdosing of Iboga, which I described in the video about it, which is probably a better solution, but it's a bit more complicated to do. And also sometimes, actually regularly, I'm getting questions about MMS. People try to read about it on internet, but they, over the years, they have managed so well to remove almost all truthful information about it that people are really bombarded with these carefully calculated lies that MMS is harsh on the body, that there are risks, that even some of my viewers, when they read these articles, they're so skillfully written that people get deceived, and they're writing me, yes, maybe it helps, but it's a bleach, isn't it? It's like, how can I drink bleach? No, you are not drinking bleach for sure. It is similar to bleach. I will just tell you one of the tricks they use to create this psychological effect. They are taking temporary side effects like feeling nausea, and they make it sound as if it is something really scary, while I think it's worth being nauseous, or there is a chance that you are somewhat nauseous for 1 or 2 hours when you can cure a serious thing. And it is only a possibility. It's not that all people are nauseous from MMS. For example, I am not. So these misleading articles, they talk about some side effects, but that is when you drink really bottles. I mean, like you take 1,100 doses or 1,000 doses. I mean, who does that? And what they don't mention is that if you take 100 or 1,000 doses of most of the things which they sell you in the pharmacy as safe, then you get in way more side effects than with MMS. So those are safe because from one dose you don't get the side effects, the medicines recommended by them. But MMS is not safe because 1,000 doses can poison you or kill you. Well, probably if you drink a few liters of it, maybe you will really die. But who drinks a few liters? And why they write about such possibilities when practically, people don't do that? If it was that dangerous, then why do they sell all the other things in the pharmacies? People can drink liters of that as well and die. Actually, MMS is relatively very harmless and mild medicine, and it is compared to all other chemical medicines. It is relatively one of the most harmless and mild on the body. That's the reality when it is taken following the protocol properly. For example, there was a case of a person taking, by mistake, he somehow did not understand the dosage and he was taking 10 or 20 times more the dose. So what happened to him? He was really nauseous. Yes, he felt strong nausea. At the end, he got cured, and there were no long-lasting effects, side effects. And again, I'm getting all the time questions what to do with cancers, although I have made so many videos about that. Iboga, recently I also got another report from somebody who got help with iboga for cancer, a very advanced stage of cancer. Also, it's a good idea to have a good amount of MMS stored for the future because it will help for water treatment. And here is a very good question from Joseph. How about long-term water storage? Yeah, this is actually a very good question because, okay, we will fill up plastic bottles, that's better than nothing. I really tried digging on information on how toxic is it to store water a long time in plastic, but there is nothing specific, just general stuff that over time BPA will be released. What does it mean over time? 2 years, 30, 50, 100? So Joseph, I've never heard, nor I could find any information on putting natural resins inside. All I know from historic sources is that people used to throw silver coins in the wells for the wells not to get infected with all kinds of bacteria. So silver and probably also gold pieces will be useful. I also put crystals. A cheaper alternative to the shop crystals would be, for example, quartz sand. And that is sold as building material, very, very cheap. It is actually ground low-grade quartz. And by the way, talking about precious stones, those who have watched the videos on that, Vedic crystal healing, this seller has a new supply of very nice aquamarine, and this price is really top. These stones are genuine for sure, and very high transparent quality. A viewer is asking, is it okay in spiritual sense to sterilize cats? I don't know about the spiritual perspective, but I personally wouldn't do it because the general rule is don't do to others what you don't want to have done on yourself, and the way it affects the health of the animals is not very positive, exactly as the health of people who undergo similar surgeries. After that, very often they have health and psychological issues. Now listen to a statement of a Swiss police head. Imagine you can no longer withdraw money at the ATM, you can no longer pay with the card in the store or refuel your tank at the gas station. Heating stops working, it's cold, streets go dark. It is conceivable that the population would rebel or that there would be looting, he said, adding that the Swiss authorities should be taking measures to prepare for such extreme scenarios. And God knows what they have been planning for this winter. Once it starts getting cold and the demons become more active, most likely there won't be really hardcore tribulation for a couple of more years. Most likely. But on the other hand, they will have nastier and nastier surprises for us during this pre-tribulation period. In a World Economic Forum publication, a certain professor actually wrote that if there was no hunger, who would clean our toilets? For many of us, hunger is not a problem, but an asset. So they are getting more and more brazen by the day. In China, they are deploying even tanks on the streets. So they will be defending their parasitic infrastructure at all cost. For example, in US, they investigate only half of the murders already even serious crime, people get away with that. Even where I live, some 30 years ago, this was a zero crime area. Now also lots of the murders, if they are committed by the minorities, which they plan to use as private armies, or something similar, which will serve their purposes for creating the right unrest at the right for them time. When the minorities commit crime, yeah, they get away with murder even here, while actually the shopkeeper here in a very remote area said yesterday there were serious checks. If you're not following your working hours, you're in big trouble. So they can't get together to investigate serious crime, but they have plenty of personnel to terrorize some poor people in the countryside who have a miserable small something which could be barely called shop. So, I mean, what is the problem if that is open 15 minutes after the announced official time? And this insanity will be only escalating. Many people are printing now with 3D printers guns for their protection. And I encountered this interesting video of some nun who claims she had a divine revelation about the upcoming events. I don't know if that is true, but just out of curiosity, she was also mentioning dinosaurs, and they would be quite big, and when they target a certain house with people, they can easily destroy the house, and even hiding in the basement, she said, will be useless. And according to her, the only way to hide from the dinosaurs would be in some sort of special trenches or underground hiding places. This is the sketch, but unfortunately I couldn't exactly understand what is it all about. Maybe it is about digging a very narrow opening on the top so that the dinosaur cannot reach the actual hiding place down there. Maybe, I don't know. And this problem of the government organizing illegal trafficking of people and so-called migrants or refugees, this is, it seems, very important for them. It is becoming obvious they will use them to spark these revolutions and counter-revolutions the way they want them. In some places they will use them as private armies, even without the clear understanding of the people who will be used in that way. But they will be prompted to do so by their preachers. That's why the governments are now giving them free housing, sometimes even luxury, lots of free money. They are giving them out cell phones. They're basically taking care of their future armies. It's a cheap way to mobilize lots of young men. They don't need to give them uniform. They don't need to pay them wages. And the resulting crime rate has already significantly changed the lives of many people of the areas which are particularly affected. So many problems are escalating, and it's obvious that that is happening now faster since 2 years or so. Also the drought, which we have been warned for since hundreds of years, that during this period there will be drought in my area. Springs which were always running are now dry for the first time this summer. I see them dry, they give no more water. River cruising is becoming impossible in larger and larger areas of Europe. Areas which had larger rivers just a decade ago, now you can cross over by foot. all kinds of legislations in different countries aiming at harming the white people in all kinds of ways, economic, no protection from crime. There is such a proliferation. They're becoming so aggressive with this type of discrimination against the white people. It's okay to sing or openly call for murdering white people. That is okay. It's not allowed to do it for any other race, just the Caucasian race. And everything beastly is encouraged. For example, they are quietly legalizing sex with animals. They are having drag shows and all kinds of so-called classes for sex, even with children, even for children which are below 10. And strangely enough, they always inform them only about perverted things, not about anything normal. And exactly at the time when so many people have lost their jobs and they're in financial trouble, all of a sudden there's this fantastic opportunity to get an online job. Wow! Isn't it exactly what you were looking for? And people go, they fall in the trap. It is also very, very well paid. And it is quite few of them, and they are easily accessible, and of course, they accept you eagerly. And then after you start working, gradually find out that it is all about actually deleting and suppressing the truth and putting in the foreground of people's attention all kinds of perverted and nasty parasitic stuff. Of course, such employees are always forced to sign up agreements that they will be closely monitored in everything they do. To their surprise, they even discover that people have been employed to follow them and even trouble their relatives. Yes, it does reach that far, of course. They take this very seriously because the count of the souls, that is what matters for them. There is no shortage for money if they can buy souls for that. It's the deal they are looking for. They can print as much money as they need. Mike from Portugal is asking me, how do I prepare? Well, I live in the countryside. I plant vegetables for myself. This is the first year in my life in which I have a real harvest, because in the previous place where I lived, the slugs, they just would eat all sprouts. It was impossible to sprout anything from seeds, or even big plants. They would just demolish them by the next day. But here it's normal. It's normal. That's the difference, to have a place which is not infested by parasites, namely the slugs. And I'm making all arrangements when needed to be completely independent from civilization in every respect. That's why I didn't have time to make video for 2 months now. No, I'm not dependent on any group, although it's good to have a group. But one should be also fully prepared to be independent on one's own, because group, but what kind of group? By group, many people simply understand people who now understand what is going on or talk against the parasitic takeover. But I found out the hard way that these people, most of them will also eventually take the mark. Now, if you find a group of people who are clearly on the path of not taking any new passport, any new document or certificate, no matter of what kind, and even if their life is threatened for not taking such certificates, yes, some of the people in this type of groups might be a good company in such situation, but just any eco group, I don't know, because the eco people, they will be also into aliens when the aliens come to help them, or they will be into concerts, so they will be mesmerized by the Antichrist. You're mentioning to go and live in an Amazon tribe. Yeah, it will be a bit difficult to get to uncontacted tribe, and for unprepared person from Portugal, right? You're from Portugal. If you're not familiar with the ways in that continent, where quite a significant part of the population have the crime as their way of life, if you don't know how to live in such an environment, combined with the onslaughts of mosquitoes, which are as determined as helicopters, if you are ready for that, you may try with the Amazon tribe. If you ask me personally, where would it better, in a rural area of Portugal or rural area in Mexico? Probably I would select Portugal, although both areas are under the threat of flooding, according to the prophecies, just because of this high crime rate in South and Latin America. There is a reason for which crime is the way of life of so many people there. But if you're really talking about uncontacted Amazon tribes, you have to be a shaman to live there, because they live very much like our ancestors used to do. They use magic on daily basis for all kinds of practical purposes. They are usually unfriendly to outsiders, and I don't know how you can survive in such an environment even without the tribulation going on. Daybird from US is asking, how is it possible to have a resurrection and reincarnation at the same time? If all the resurrected into a full body and the soul is put back into the body, how can one soul be put into multiple bodies which it used to inhabit throughout the ages? Well, I don't know if during the Judgment Day it will be exactly like this, but I'm personally convinced that resurrection and reincarnation don't contradict each other. They can sound confusing for somebody who has been looking into these matters, for example, from modern church view. Probably for the initial followers of Christ, it was completely different, but I cannot go in length. It's already almost 1 hour video and it will be a lot off topic, but there is quite a lot of proof that a certain soul can inhabit multiple bodies at a time. Even some souls have 2 incarnations at a time on earth now. This I have experienced, and many other people have also experienced. This is not impossible, just the self is more like a hub, and also the time is not linear. So when time is actually different, not the way we understand it, also this simultaneous living in different bodies is not exactly the way we are taught to perceive simultaneous things. And the best place to find all this explained very well in proper English are the set books of Jane Roberts, which I recommend absolutely. Now, Dave is addressing a very serious issue, a problem which doesn't get enough coverage or doesn't get any coverage by the alternative media, and that is the perversion of the Kundalini or the sexual energy. I've been warning about this since a couple of years because this is extremely important. Once the parasites get a control of person's Kundalini, if they can tamper with it, they can control that soul, they can control that living creature. So not by chance Kali Yuga is called the age of quarrel. So like in black magic, for example, when a black magician wants to give trouble to somebody, in the beginning they start with the easiest. They make a black magic to start quarrels within his family and his nearby people. So the person is always troubled, and that's what the parasites did. First, they practically destroyed the family life. Real families with love or couples are very, very rare nowadays. So love was destroyed for most people, and then the body is still looking an expression for it. And now after that, they came with the pornography. What a sweet offer. In the beginning, pornography was showing kind of normal stuff, and over the decades, it got just so much uglier and uglier that currently is mostly disgusting stuff, actually. But because that happened gradually, people who were always into that, they did not notice the transition, and in their psyche, intimacy got redefined with all kinds of nasty things mixed within. And then that gets external confirmation in the sense that, you see, everybody around is also like this, so apparently that's how love is. And the deeper one falls in this trap of pornography, the more difficult it is to get out. And if one cannot get out just by wishing so, one may get help from the sacred plants, or intense prayer, or the simple meditation technique which I have been recommending. But one cannot get purified until one is chained by these sexual perversions. And when I was reading the prophecies last year, in one of the episodes, they were saying, and there will be like open sex, ugly sex on the streets, like dogs openly. I was thinking, I mean, really, is it gonna reach that low? And just recently, now this nonsense started, especially in US, by some sort of I don't know, pro-abortion or anti-abortion people. It doesn't even matter what the slogan is. The important is the ugly stuff that they're showing during their street demonstrations. When I saw that, I thought, oh yes, we are gonna reach where the prophecy said for sure, and it is coming very, very soon. I hope this answers your question. If it doesn't, let me know again in the questions section. Now and then this type of titles and topics come up in the alternative media. Don't be misled by this type of things. You know, the methods they recommend, some of them are just ridiculous, like taking more vitamins. First of all, the vitamin myth, you know, what are these vitamins? Often they are just radioactive powders from China, and the people who take them actually get more sick. Not all, but some, especially the cheaper brands. So to expect that such things, which don't even help general health, will remove from body crystalline and computer chip-like formations which have intelligently assembled themselves and are anchoring inside the blood vessels with, you know, mechanically, that's how they have been designed, to believe that some sort of vitamins which don't help anything at all, will remove that. That is clearly helping the mission of the Antichrist. That somehow or other you take the mark of the beast, and then you will eventually will find some way to detoxify it. Or no, there will be no way to detoxify from that. Don't deceive yourself. Of course, I don't expect any of my viewers to go and get fixed now for the first time. That's not the reason for which I'm saying this, but it will be the same with the upcoming campaigns, which will be disguised as anti-terrorism security card, and then the people may fall for it because, you see, at least they're not injecting anything into me. Well, the card will do almost the same or the same thing which the fix is doing, or also don't follow any of the traps of the described in the prophecies. Don't go to meet the good aliens just to check them out and then see and then decide. The decision will be taken when you're near their ship already, and the damage will be unrepairable. And in the prophecies of Anatoly Kievsky, it was said that God will arrange in such a way that each and every household, they will hear at least once before they take the mark clearly. Either they will hear it from somewhere, or even if needed, they will send somebody to their home to personally tell everybody that this is the mark of the beast. God will make sure, the angels will make sure everybody hears this clearly in a way he can understand it at least once. So please, don't waste your chances. Remember why